Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. We are live. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's the Lynn and Debbie show. We are super excited today. We have a really special guest, but I get so excited about our guest, Debbie, that I almost forget to introduce our
We
show.
always
So
do.
we'll be right back after this. Welcome
Hello
back.
again.
We just love that music. Just peps us up like
It does. It's a really good tune. Little good beat to it.
Like we're not even pepped up enough, right?
I know. Woohoo!
You guys, everybody's time is priceless and precious. So we're just going to get busy and introduce an awesome guy. He happens to be one of our Grow Live friends, and he's just an awesome guy. I'm super excited to have him on the show. And so with further ado, we're going to do a little intro, and we're going to be back with the one and only Doug Wing.
The wingman.
The wingman. Woohoo. Okay, so we'll be right back, okay? Don't go nowheres. Don't go nowheres. We're back. Doug, did you see I changed the intro on you, didn't I?
Hey, good morning. It's great to be here.
Welcome.
Good morning, Doug.
I hope you enjoyed that intro with your dad and your family on there. I hope I surprised you.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Your intro with you and then the intro after was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great to be
So
here.
fun.
We are super honored that you're here. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We are super honored that you're here. And so I'm going to let Debbie get right in. Your time is precious, and we really appreciate everybody being here. And I think we got a comment. Teodora's here.
Oh, hey, Teodora.
Hi, Teodora. Well, thank you so much. Now, this is an interactive show. So, Doug, you're in room with some fabulous ladies here. Aww. Okay, so this is an interactive show. So feel free to ask questions as we go. And let's just get right into it.
Let's get the party started. Come on now.
Here we go.
Yes, Doug, so happy that you're here and that you're joining us. You have so much going on in your life right now. You've done so many things in your past, and you're continuing to blaze a trail. So let's just give some people that are watching and future watchers, let's get to know a little bit more about where you're from, where you're born and raised.
Yeah, so I was born in Germany, in West Germany, kind of the southern, over by Stuttgart. And that I wasn't, there very long. I can't remember that part of it because I was a baby. But my father was in the military. My mom was from Germany, and then I was born there. And then we went back to where my dad grew up, and that was Springville, Utah, which is about 50 miles south of Salt Lake City. And that's pretty much where I lived most of my life, except for a few times I went on mission, on church mission and things like that. But for the most part, right there in Utah, small town, very nice place to grow up, and had a good childhood, good life, and it was great. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh gosh, well, yeah, we're going to definitely get in a little bit more to your childhood. Well, let's start with how many siblings you have.
Yeah, so I have three. Okay, so this is kind of the Brady Bunch story, I guess. But so I have an older brother and then two younger sisters. And so it's interesting. My older brother's 2.5 years older than me, and then me, and then my sister's a year younger, and then another sister's a year younger. So my mom and dad were like boom, 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 right? And they just had them really fast. But then when my parents were about 26 years old, my uncle passed away, and my cousins, I had three cousins that lived in Nevada, and the state of Nevada was going to, excuse me, split these first cousins of mine up. And my parents are like, oh, we can't do this. And so we ended up adopting them. And so my parents, like I said, they were 25, 26 years old. And all of a sudden we had 7 kids in the family. And so it was, and at that time, my dad wasn't really traveling yet as much as he did, but yeah, so it was a big change in our family, both for the other kids and then for my parents as well. But
Wow,
Wow.
that
right.
is a testament to your dad and your mother and the integrity and the moral values that they have, that they said no, they don't want these kids to be separated and in foster care. And to take that on at like 25, 26 years old,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, I had incredible parents. They man, I don't know how they did it. I mean, I have one son, and I was like, can you imagine having 4 or 5?
Multiply.
And I'm sure it was just crazy and a lot of work, and I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And they had great attitudes about it, and they were amazing. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Well, I do have one thing I would love for you to share, Doug, because I just think it's funny, and it sort of gives us a little bit more of an indication of who your father was and his determination. And if you don't mind, if you could quickly share, your dad was in the military, and also thank you for his service. And
Mm.
then he went to Germany. He met your mother. Could you tell a little about that?
Yeah, my dad was he was very driven. He didn't take no for an answer in whatever he did, uh, and so he ended up having to go into this city to go into the town to do something. I don't know what it was. He would have to go in and meet with the mayor or something about about something with the military that based there. And so he saw my mom, and he thought she was cute and everything, and he was interested, but she just blew him off because my grandpa Meyer, he was very strict, and he was man, he was hardcore. I mean, I remember meeting him when I was younger, and he had this big deep laugh, but he was also had this serious side. And he told my mom, don't ever bring home an American, and don't ever bring home a Catholic. So my dad just found out where she lived, and he showed up at her house one day, and she opens the door, and he's smiling, and and she just slammed the door in his face. And my grandpa said, who is that? And she goes, nobody, is the wrong house. But he just kept coming back, and finally she gave in. And so anyway, she was asking him one day, she's like, hey, what religion are you? And he goes, I'm a Mormon. And she said, I didn't say it out loud, but she said, that has to be worse than a Catholic. But
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
yeah. So long story short, my grandpa actually had met members of our faith, and he liked them. He thought they were great people. So that wasn't an issue, and my dad was so good with people. That was one thing that was really incredible. My dad could make friends very quickly. He would travel all over the world, and I was amazed. One time my dad said, let's go to Germany together, in Switzerland, Austria. So I went with my dad, and every place we stopped, every hotel, every restaurant, every shop, we went and bought suits, and they're all like, Herving, they're like, come in, and they never forgot him. They knew who he was. They loved him. And he just had this connection with people. He was really good with people. Yeah.
Well, Doug, people are probably looking and going, why does he keep talking about his dad? So I think we should go to this question right here, and
Yes.
and start filling in some questions that people might have about.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book recently, and it's a really cool book, which I'm gonna just stick right here a little. I think I did this here right. There's a little quote in this little book.
Yeah.
And you want to read that,
Yeah,
Deb?
sure. I love this. If you concentrate on building a business and not the man, you will not achieve. But if you concentrate on building the man, you achieve both. Hal Wing, founder of Little Giant Ladders.
And that,
Yes. So that's one of the great quotes in the book. And that quote is actually, there is a plaque on the by the front door at Little Giant, and that quote is on the building.
Oh.
And so my dad had this philosophy of people are more important than things. In fact, people are more important than anything. And he would always say, never forget that the most important asset we have at Little Giant, it's not the machines, it's not the products, it's not our patents, it is the people. And so my dad was really a builder of people. In fact, when my dad passed away, the governor of Utah spoke at this event, and he said Hal Wing always used to tell people he was in the ladder business, but that's not true. He said Hal Wing was in the people business.
Mhm.
And so
Oh.
to answer your question about the book is, I had retired from the company, and then a few years later, the business was sold. And after my father passed away in August, it'll be 10 years that he passed away. And we were going, the kids are going through my parents' house, and after my mom and dad had passed away, and we're going through things, and I found this manuscript. It was a book that my dad had started writing about his life, and I didn't even know he was doing this. It was probably maybe an inch and a half thick, and so I'm thumbing through this, and I talked to my siblings, and I'm like, hey, any of you have any interest in keeping this? They're like, we were just no, we're gonna toss it. So for some strange reason, I kept that, and probably kept it for 7-8 years. Yes. And I kept looking at it from time to time and thinking about it. And I thought, I wonder if I should finish this book about my dad. And I'll tell you kind of what helped me push me over the top is I'm a pretty good friend with Jeffrey Gitomer, who's written 17, 18 books. And
Yeah, give or take. Give or take.
I'm down in North Carolina with him, and I'm telling him these stories, and he looked at me and he goes, "You've got to write this book. These are incredible." He goes, "This book is going to change the world." And I was looking at him like, "Yeah, right. You're a writer. I don't know what I'm doing." And he goes, "No, seriously, you need to do this." And so I decided, okay, well, I got the time and I'll figure this out. And so that's how I made the decision to write this book about my dad. It has a little history, a little life's history, but really the book is about, his core principles, his values. The book is really about building people, loving people, helping people, giving people opportunities. That's really what the book, and then how to apply those things in your life.
I love that. I love that. It's just, I started reading it on Kindle, and I'm waiting for my signed autograph book, which real quick, I'm going to ask, do you still have signed autograph copies that people can get from your website?
Oh yeah, I've got quite a few books here, but
Okay.
so the
Okay.
first, yeah, I'll keep signing them as long as people want them. But what I'm doing is keeping track of the first 100 hardback and paperback, and so those are numbered. And I think we're getting up to about 70 on the hardbacks the autographed ones that I've signed, and then maybe 15 or 20 so far. But yeah, there, people that want a signed version, they just order them. But I think most people have been getting them on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But it's been a really rewarding experience, especially when I get emails and texts from people and things where they say this book has changed my life. So
And
it's really cool.
Doug, one of my friends is watching from the UK. So thank you for
Hi,
being here,
Lawson.
Lawson. Thank you for being here.
Doug, I have the book and I have read it and it's amazing. But, we jumped right into all of this because I know Lynn and I are so excited that you're with us. But let's not forget to tell our audience that this book came recently, but after so much investment of time creating and founding this business that your dad brought over to the United States. Could you tell us a little bit about where this all started after your dad's persistence won your mother over, by the way, which I enjoy?
Yeah, that's a great question because, I think people today don't have any idea how long Little Giant's been in business, but this is actually the 50-year anniversary of Little Giant. 1972 is when it started. And so I think people need to realize that when you start a company, my dad always used to say, it's going to take you twice as long as what you think it's going to take you. You're going to make, it's going to take, you're going to make half the profit you think you're going to make. And, so it was the way that started was my dad was in Germany. We went back to Germany when I was about 7 years old, and we were living over there. My dad was a great salesman. He was selling life insurance, and they said, "Hey, you speak German." My dad was incredible. He learned how to speak German. He learned how to sing in German, yodel, everything. I mean, he was incredible. He did whatever he wanted to do. And so we go over there, and my dad opens his office over there. And he had a partner that went over that helped him, and they were both working for this life insurance company. And this partner, Richard Miner, he sees, I think, a home and garden show or something. He sees the original, German version of this little giant. It's heavy, but it's kind of cool. And he goes to my dad and he goes, "Hey, I saw this ladder. It's incredible. You need to look at it and see it." My dad goes, "We're selling insurance. What do we need to see a ladder for?" Anyway, he wouldn't stop, he was just persistent. "Hal, you got to see this ladder." So my dad sees it and he's like, "Wow, these are cool." The funny thing about that is they started the business together. And then this Richard Miner guy, he got impatient. He's like, "I don't think this is going anywhere." And so my dad bought him out, and he ended up working for us as a salesman for a long time. He says, that was the dumbest thing I ever did."
It's a great story. It's a great story.
Yeah. So, but anyway, what happened is my dad we moved back to well, and I got to tell you, my mom deserves a lot of credit, because my dad was making probably in the 70s, maybe 70, 80,000 a year, which is a lot of money. Right. And,
not when you have 7 kids at home though.
Yeah. But I mean,
in the 70s, it was.
It was. Yeah. My dad says it was probably equivalent to 150,000 today, whatever. But so he goes to my mom and says, "I'm going to start this ladder company." And my mom goes, "Well, how much money are we going to make?" And he goes, "Well, as near as I can tell, the first year it'll be between $8,000 and $10,000. And my mom's like, now think about this. My mom said to my dad, "I believe in you. You've never let us go hungry. Go for it." Now,
Wow.
what faith she had in my dad. And so my dad gets a sample of this ladder. We move back to America, and he goes and shows all his friends a bunch of businesses, and he pre-sells a whole container full of them. And so, he gets the ladders, and he goes, here's the funny thing is, he goes back to everybody. He kept a list of everybody that said they'd buy one. And everybody had an excuse. "Well, my son's sick, or I lost my job, or I'm going through a divorce, or my kid's in college now." And so my dad learned something from that, is he should have got the money up front. Right. So anyway, the ladders come in, and he was forced really to learn how to show the ladder and go door to door, toe to toe sales. And he ended up selling that first container, going to houses, going to businesses. There's a crazy story in there about, you have this quota every day. He'd tell my mom as he walked out the door, "If I don't sell 8 ladders today, 10 ladders, whatever it is, we're broke." So he says, one day I'm 1 ladder short of, selling my quota, and that I've got to do. And somebody says, "Hey, I think this guy could be interested." And my dad goes to this guy's house, excuse me, and the guy has 1 arm. Now, think about this. If you've ever seen Little Giants, how they work, and you've got to push the buttons, you've got to pull them out, you've got to extend them. It takes exertion to use this ladder, right? It goes from 4'7" all the way to 17 feet. So my dad is, talking to this guy about the ladder and shows it to him. The guy says, "Mr. Wing, if you can convince me that I can operate this ladder with 1 arm, I'll buy it from you." So my dad says, he goes, "I'm physically wrestling with this ladder." He goes, "I'm using 1 arm. I put 1 arm behind my back." He goes, "I'm using my legs, my chin. To make this ladder work." We're down there, both of us on the ground, wrestling with it, and show him. And he goes, the guy ends up buying it. I convinced him.
I would have loved to see that on video.
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be cool? If that was like a reality show, and it would be, Hal Wing's life would have been a cool reality show.
And I thought
crazy experiences. Motorcycle crashes, getting bucked off horses, and sleeping in his car, and selling ladders, and all kinds of. But anyway, that's how the whole thing got started. And then they started. Thank you, Scott. They started going to trade shows and fairs, and that's because they knew, okay, this works going to 1 person. Well, let's go out to hundreds of people. And then after that, they went into infomercials and went into millions of people. So that's how the whole thing. And then the retail came. Yeah.
Just so you know, I sent you a crappy picture of it, but that was literally me opening you saw that ladder picture I showed you? I messaged you. that's my hallway closet upstairs. It's in a closet all by itself. But that was the first thing after I refinanced my house. I was like, oh, and I'm fixing my house. I need one of those ladders. So I've got
Yeah,
the
it's a
ladder.
great
It came with
ladder.
it came with a CD thing with it.
Uh,
Now I don't
to
know how
show
they
you how
do
to
that
use it.
because how to use it, because I don't think you can find CD players
Oh,
really
you
You
can
easily.
just go on YouTube.
go YouTube and a little
No,
bit.
I know, but I'm just saying that's how long
Yeah.
I've had it. Have had it for a little while. But
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
the
they're
only ladder you ever need.
yeah,
yeah.
it's awesome.
Which I want to go back to even though starting the business. So can I ask why you ended up selling it, or if you don't mind answering that
Yeah, that's a
question?
good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was just curious.
Well,
I know you've lived your life with,
there's yeah, there's a little saying that says the first generation starts the business, the second generation grows the business, and the third generation ruins the business. So, I mean, I have a son, my brother has a son, but really, we knew a long time ago, my brother and I had talked about this, that the third generation really didn't have the heart into it. They just
yeah. Yeah. I
they're
got
good. They're good kids and everything, but they just don't have. They're not gonna put the. They don't. I don't know. They just don't have the same passion. Where we grew up, I was 10 years old and started working for my dad. My brother was 12, and I mean, my son worked 1 year in manufacturing. He says that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I can't do it again. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So it's
yeah.
just a different mindset.
Yeah. Actually, it's a good point though, because you were right there by your dad and you did this stuff, and
Yeah,
that's where your heart, your life, and your memories are. But then you don't want to condition your next generation that doesn't have that closeness, or doesn't understand why you want a ladder business,
yeah,
would not understand it, to when they're not in the trenches of it. It makes sense not to spoil something good. What like they say, you want to retire from your career when you're at peak, not when it's because you have the injuries and you're not.
yeah.
So that's a good
Yeah,
point.
I mean, seriously, my son looked at me one day and goes, "You're going to give me the company, right?" And I'm looked at him like, "Why would I do that?" I mean, it's just that they have this mindset that I deserve it.
Entitlement.
Yeah, the entitlement mindset. I was just like, "No, I'm not giving you the company." So
That's
Oh my
anyway,
gosh, Doug, I have to bring this up.
yeah,
So, in the book I read, this is a segue to this just
don't
popped in my
ruin it for
head.
the readers though.
I'm
Don't.
not. I bet we
Okay.
have to talk about this. The
Okay.
fact that you had worked hand in hand and you had an extremely amazing work ethic, as you, I'm sure, still do, being raised by this man and this wonderful mother that you have. But you had gone, you were working at the company, you were older, you decided you were going to purchase a house.
hmm
You went to your father and you were letting him know, I got to make more money. And what did he say to you?
Oh yeah.
yeah, that was a big mistake the way I did that, and I learned from it. It was kind of I'll tell you, I had this conversation with my there I'll just go back. I remember leaving the house when I was, when I got married was I what 23, 24 years old. And my dad had this little talk with me and he pulls me into his study there at the house and he says, you're getting married, you're leaving the house. And I said, yeah. And he goes, just so you know, you're never coming back here. And I was like, it was kind of shocking, right? I mean, I looked at my dad, I thought he was joking, and I looked in his eye, and I knew when he was serious because I'd worked with him, and he was dead serious. And so it was kind of the same speech of when I went into my dad. I wanted, I'd been recently married and struggling, going to school, working, and I went in and I said to my dad, "This is a big mistake." I said, I either said I need more money or I want more money." And he looked me right in the eye without even, I mean, he was dead serious. And he goes, "Why? You're not worth any more money to me right now. And unless you're worth more money, I'm not going to pay you any more money just because you're my son. You think I would do that?" And I was just like, whoa. So anyway, for a minute there, I was like in shock. But then he said something to me. He said, well, he goes, today might be your lucky day. He said, we just had the company that's been doing the cleaning of the building. They just gave their, 2 weeks notice. And so here's how much it pays per month. And he goes, if you want to come in before work or after work and clean the entire offices, you can earn this money and you can go get a house. And that's exactly what I did. And gosh, I'm trying to think of how many years we did that. Probably 3 or 4 years, I think. Yeah. And so I was working, 8 hours a day plus another 2 or 3 in the morning or at night. So but I learned a valuable lesson that there's nothing, there's not anything like something for nothing. Right. And just because I do respect my dad now like crazy for that, that he taught me that, hey, just because your name is Wing, in fact, because your name is Wing, you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else.
No favoritism. No
Yeah.
favoritism. Yeah.
No,
Man.
and that is huge. A lot of times, like we discussed earlier, a little bit of entitlement is not anything that you're really familiar with, because
Yeah.
no matter what.
And then, as I went through and started getting more responsibility in the company, I kind of had this. So the next time I wanted to do more in the business, I went and had a different approach with my dad. I said, what can I do to grow? I went back and said, what can I do to earn more money and to grow and to become more valuable to the company? And he's like, all right. And he liked my question that way. And he said, you need to go into sales because you'll really grow in sales. And the sales, my dad was in sales before, obviously, right? And so he went out and knew what it took to be away from your family and to go out and just work your rear end off. And so my dad really had a soft spot for the sales guys and gals at Little Giant. And we made good money, because my dad, it was funny. People from time to time would complain, well, the salesmen, they make all this money. And I remember one time my dad was so upset about it. He called a meeting. He got everybody in the company and he got up on this whiteboard and he drew a tractor. He drew he wasn't a great artist, but he drew this tractor and he had the engine. The engine was gone. And he goes, now what's missing? Someone raised their hand, the motor. And he goes, I want to tell all of you here right here and now that the salesmen and women of this company are the engine. And unless somebody goes out and sells a ladder, we have no reason to build. And I don't want to hear any more about how much the salesmen make. In fact, if any of you want to go and be a salesman, come and see me and we'll put you to work but keep your mouth closed, because these guys, they earn their money and they're away from their families. And so he really supported the salespeople at the company. And in fact, my dad would come into sales meetings, he would just pop in and give us these little nuggets and stuff. And it was great. He had this wit about him, but he would tell people, because sometimes some of the sales guys would get big heads. They'd come back, oh, I sold 300 ladders at this, show. And I remember my dad walked in one time and at the end, he said, never forget, guys, the products make you all look really good. So when you get a big head, you remember it's the ladder. It's not you. It was really good.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got a good product, it doesn't take rocket scientists to do if you do the work to point out the good features of a product that stand out.
He had this unbelievable self-belief and confidence. Like from time to time, we would get knocked off, and it was always like half price. People would go take them to China and copy them, or Korea, or wherever. And some sales guys would be freaking out, and they'd be like, Hal, should we go look for another job? And my dad would look right at him and he'd say, you can go look for another job if you want to, but we've always made it. We're always going to make it. We have the best quality. And he would say, our competitors know what their products are worth, and so do we. So, I mean, he had no problem selling at double the price. No problem at all.
Doug, I haven't read the whole book or anything yet, but one thing I have a feel for your dad is your dad's heart was always so youthful. He stayed with the mentality that we did when growing up, that we were God-given, and we forget as we get older that you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe what you're doing and have the passion. And he never lost that, especially and he never took no, with your mom and selling these ladders. This is something that a resilient child does. And so,
so my dad started later in life. He started riding dirt bikes, and my brother and I were riding them and racing and doing all this stuff. And my dad just, whatever he did 110%. I mean, and so he was like in his 30s, late 30s, and he started riding dirt bikes, and these guys would laugh at him. They'd be like, yeah, he's just a squirrel. He doesn't know what he's doing. And my dad just used this fuel. He said within 6 months, I crashed my brains out, but I started getting better. And I ended up beating all these guys. Cause it just, it was
He
really
was
hilarious.
fearless.
Yeah. So it was a young man's sport. I mean, I started racing when I was like 13, 14. My brother, we were, doing pretty well. And my dad would go up and race with all of us. I mean, my dad, he was like in his 40s by then. And, it was all these young guys. And it was funny. It was at this one racetrack in Salt Lake, and they had an announcer, and he would announce over because you had a number on your bike, and he would announce all these people. And my dad's lined up with all these teenagers and guys in their 20s and stuff. And here's my dad, probably 40 years old. And the announcer goes, "Oh my heck, folks." He goes, "Hal Wing is in this race. He's just 3 years younger than God."
Well, they had different class divisions though, right? Because I know all about motocross and stuff.
Well,
My ex-husband.
not then. They didn't.
They didn't. So you didn't have your own class. So he was definitely his own class by himself.
The mini bikes they did, which I was doing then, but the bigger stuff they didn't have like they have now. And so there's my dad. And, like you said, he goes, "There's Hal Wing." And he's old.
Did he win against those kids ever?
Yeah. So the thing that he wasn't very good at the motocross thing, but then they have the off-road thing, the desert racing, which are like 100 miles. Sometimes they're even longer. My dad got really good at this. And one year he raced this very, very prestigious race called the Las Vegas 400 miles. And my dad finished third in the thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was
he's probably, again, like you said, they got classes now. So he definitely probably was number one in his class. Because there's no guys at that age. Well, there's a few, but there not too many that are willing to risk their life at that. So again, he believed he knows God's going to take you when he's going to take you. So until then, just right.
He was really fearless. Like he really liked aggressive horses and like Arabians. He really liked the challenge of it. And in fact, the books talks about the story where he was looking at these horses at this Arabian ranch, and the owner of this ranch said, "Oh, Hal, this would be a good horse for you. And this would be a good horse for you. It's a good, gentle horse." My dad pointed to this one horse and he goes, "What about this horse?" And he goes, "Hal, that horse will never be ridden." And my dad said, "I'll take it." And he broke that horse and he rode it. And
oh wow, that's an art to do that.
Yeah, and there's a story in the book. I think it's in the book. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, from Terry Penrod, where he says your dad got bucked off a horse and broke his ribs one day, and he was really hurting. And it was up at his ranch, and he said, "Take me to the house." And he says, 20 minutes later, your dad calls and says, "Come and get me again." So they went and got him. And he goes, "Get the horse saddled up, this horse that bucked him off." And he said, "I'm getting back on that thing." And he said, he got back on it and the horse settled down. And then my dad says, "Okay, take me back." But he said he wanted to prove to that horse and show him who he was.
Yeah, because, horses, based on how you feel, they feel you, and they know you. So to have that connection, say, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that horse even knew who Hal was, right? Like, he's not going to give up.
I'll tell you what, one guy in the book said, "Your dad was a man's man." He said, "Your dad was he was just flowing with testosterone and self-belief. And he was all my friends growing up, they said, 'Your dad's so cool.'" They just said, "You just had the coolest dad." And they like to come up to the house because he was just a daredevil, Yeah.
That's awesome.
Jerry, you see what Jerry said? After Doug shared the words of his dad, he was very similar to Zig Ziglar.
Exactly. That quote that y'all put up there about building the man. I mean, Zig Ziglar says it this way: you can get anything you want to in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that is really the philosophy of Hal Wing was, I'm going to build people and they're going to help me build my company. And he was great. He was just really great.
So what type of personality did your dad have?
He was, he was confident. He was, he never quit. He never showed fear. I tell people all the time, there were scary moments at Little Giant where we were almost out of business. And there was one guy that never showed any fear. And that was Hal Wing. He was, I remember one time I went with my dad to Germany, and he bought a brand new Carrera GT Porsche. And as part of buying this very, exclusive car, you could take somebody with you, and Porsche paid to have you come out and stay there and go on the test track and see how your car was made and stuff. So my dad asked me to come with him. It was really fun to be, to go with my dad and just to be alone with him in Germany. And here we get on this test track, and this car was a 2-seater, and I was scared crazy because these cars were 200-mile-an-hour cars, and these Porsche race drivers would take you out. And I was like, man, these guys are going to scare me half to death. And my dad gets in the car and looks at the German Porsche driver and says, nothing you can do will scare me. Now think about it. You said this guy pushed it so hard. He goes, we almost lost it twice. And my dad says, I was screaming and yelling and yeah, this is great. And he goes, I don't know what that guy thought of me, but he was loving it. He lived life to the fullest. He enjoyed it. He just, I'm telling you, my dad had 9 lives and he used all of them, but I know he wouldn't go back and change it. He really,
I love it.
He enjoyed his life. He was the ultimate competitor. And when somebody told him something couldn't be done, he was on, he was on.
Tweaked his ear. What? Wait.
Yeah. In fact, in the very beginning of the book, when my dad first went to his very first trade show, the 2 brothers from the largest ladder company in the world came up to my dad and laughed in his face and said, you are an idiot, Wing. There's no way anybody's going to buy these ladders. And he said that day, he goes, that was my fuel, man. And he said, I was going to show those guys. And what was really ironic is that company tried to buy us 4 times, and my dad would
Warner, wasn't it? Wasn't it Warner?
Ladder. My dad said, I will never sell to those guys. So it was great,
Oh, so we have another question for you.
What is one piece of advice, because I know there's a ton, from your dad that helped mold you into the man you are today?
I'm not giving you a raise.
Yeah. You learned a lot there.
Other than that one.
I think
take your time. I mean, there's a lot of information in that book I've read. He's pretty profound, amazing man.
I would say it's this quote: you can tell the customer anything you want to, as long as it's the truth. Like I said, from time to time, we would have, and my dad would always say, whenever anybody copies us, that's the greatest form of flattery. So we would have all these competitors come in and copy us at half price, and then they would slam us and say, oh, they're overpriced, they're heavy, they're this and that. And my dad says, we're never going to badmouth our competitors. We are always going to point out the differences, honestly, ethically. But he said, people will figure this out. And as long as we tell the truth. And so I think that's the greatest thing that I ever learned from my dad, was that tell the truth. And as long as you tell the truth and treat people, in a kind and loving and ethical way, that you'll always be successful. And I think that's the thing that I've really carried with me is, tell the truth. And as I've done that, I've built great relationships and sold a lot of ladders, millions of dollars of ladders to people. And here's the thing that I think is the most important thing. I'm retired. A lot of the customers I had are retired, but I'm still very good friends with a lot of the people that bought ladders from me. We're dear friends. And so I think it's really about the people. Yeah.
Well, people, people like to buy and do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And that's something that people forget, and when people split hairs about not liking this person or that person, we forget we're only 6 degrees away from anyone.
The next.
Yeah.
Doug, I watched Ryan Moss on the Ken Walls Breakthrough Walls show, and he is the CEO, right? Is he still the CEO?
Yes, he is.
And what resonated with me is he has been there since the beginning of the business. Is that accurate?
He was there in not the beginning. No, he probably came to work, I would say maybe 80, 86, 87, 88, somewhere in there. Yeah. So he's been there a long time, but not from the very beginning. There were only 3 or 4 people.
Handful. Yeah. So, but what I want to say, and this is what I gather from after reading the book, after meeting you, talking to you and your stories, your dad may have given it straight to people to where it could come off maybe crass at times, perhaps, because he just gave it to you straight, but he was always honest and sincere, and it was always coming from a good place, and he treated everyone with respect. And obviously not just customers, but also the people that worked for the company, because you had so many people stay. You
Mm-hmm.
know, having Ryan Moss there since the 80s and he's still currently there, and listening to the stories that he also offered on the Ken Walsh show was just like, oh my gosh, this guy was the real deal. Hal Wang was the real deal. Like, he ran his business true and steady. And that was the testament to your father and to all of you that then took over.
Yeah, the culture that he created at Little Giant. I mean, we would have real Christmas parties there. Everybody got their birthday off with pay at the company. We would have
Wow.
amazing summer parties there, and my dad would get up in tears and tell everybody how much he loved them. And he,
Mhm.
Oh,
I mean, my dad would come. Most business owners come through the front door. They walk past everybody. They go in their office, close the door, and then when it's time to go, they go. My dad would come through the back door. He had over 400 employees. He knew every person by their name, and he knew something about them. And that takes a lot of work. And so he was so good at that. That's something that I really worked hard at and was pretty good at as well. But I mean, he cared about his people. He loved his people. I'll tell you something. One day we were in a management meeting, Ryan Moss, myself, my brother, and our CFO, and we're talking about an employee that came to us that made some really, really poor financial decisions and was about ready to lose his house. And, he came to Ryan and said, is there anything you guys can do? And Ryan says, I don't think so. He said, I just don't think so, but I'll talk to management in our management meeting. And we're talking about it. And my dad was always, he would just pop in. He would just fly open into Ryan's office and he'd be like, what's going on? That's what he'd say, And I swear my dad had ADD. And he was just like in and out. He was in a hurry all the time. He was just in a hurry. He's got things to do. He would say to me, we're burning daylight. We got people, places to go, people to see. But so he says, what's going down, guys, today? And so Ryan tells him, he says, hey, we're dealing with this employee and he's about ready to lose his house. And my dad, he was a good listener. He's watching, listening. And he just had this amazing thought process. And he looks at us and goes, well, he's a really good employee. I'd sure hate to see him lose his house. He goes, isn't he on a quarterly bonus system? And we go, yeah. And he goes, well, has he made all his bonuses this year every quarter? And we're like, yeah. And my dad looks at us and goes, give him the money. He'll pay us back. And I'm like, what kind of a boss
yeah.
loans somebody, an employee, $100,000 and says, I want this guy to save his house. We do it. He makes his bonuses. He pays us back. And I'm telling you something, that guy still works there to this day.
Oh,
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of loyalty there.
and when Hal Wing was alive and he had a problem up at his house, that guy that he helped save his house, he was the first guy up there to help him. And so that's the kind of man, that's the kind of boss that Hal Wing was and the culture that he created. There's another story. It was interesting. I was about a year ago, I was walking through Little Giant and I see this lady and I'm talking to her. She's an administrative assistant. And she says, oh, I'm leaving Little Giant. I got offered, and this is what was really interesting. She goes, I got offered twice the salary and I got all these, they're going to give me this and that and this. And then about 4 months later, I'm walking through the office again and she's back. And I said, what are you doing back here? And she said, I made a huge mistake. I went to this other company. They made me all these promises. None of the promises really, really were true. And I just missed the culture. I missed the people. And she said, I prayed that I could get another job. My job was gone. And she said, she came back and they took her back. And she said, I just missed the people and the company and everything about it. And she said, I'll never leave here. So it was really great.
Okay, so we have one last question as far as with your dad, and then we have like 3 other questions we want to get to before we leave. So, and that's the producer and me here. So,
That's fine.
Go ahead, Debbie.
And yeah. So can you tell us something about yourself or about your dad that isn't in the book? We're just trying to get the inside edition here.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about my dad. So
It's not in the book, right?
It's not in the book.
Okay.
I did tell this
Fun.
story at my dad's funeral, and I thought my mom was gonna kill me, but it was
Aw.
everybody but because my mom's like, "You cannot use humor," and then but afterwards, even my sister and her husband said, "You did
That's
that
good.
was the best story, and you were the best speaker at his funeral." But no, so my dad had this, my dad thought everybody thought like he thought. So in the beginning of the company, he hired salesmen and they went and did shows, and my dad would never take a bathroom break or never eat lunch. So he just said, "Oh, well, nobody else needs to do that." And so finally the sales manager said, "Hal, nobody thinks like you do. You're a freak of nature, right? And so you got to let guys go to the bathroom. You got to let them eat lunch." So coming back around to the story is my dad asked me to go down on a motorcycle ride with him on our Harleys. And he said, "We'll go for 3 or 4 days, and we'll have a good time. We're going to go down to the, Four Corners. We'll see all these, we'll go through Zion's, Bryce's, all these, all the canyons and stuff." And so I said, "Okay." And he tells me what time to be ready. And so the first day, you got to remember, my dad just went nonstop. I mean, he wouldn't stop to eat or anything. He would go to the stop and get gas and go to the bathroom, and then that was it. And so anyway, my dad, we stop. He says, "Gas up the bikes." He goes up and uses the restroom. And he comes back with 2 bananas, and one for him and one for me. And I'm thinking, I know what this is. This is my entire meal until we get somewhere to live, right? So if you know anything about motorcycles, you've got the right hand in gas, and you have a brake up here, and then you have this hand, the left hand, for clutch, and you got to use your feet for brakes and shifting and everything. My dad takes off, gets on his bike, takes off, and I'm looking at this banana and I'm going, "Okay, I'll put it in my pocket." So we ride all day long. I can't figure out how to peel a banana, eat a banana, and ride a motorcycle.
That's awesome.
Here's the funny part of the story. We get to the hotel, and my dad and I shared a room. It was kind of, fun, even though we were older, but, just to share with the guy that sleeps 3 hours a night. You never got any sleep yourself. But so anyway, I take my jacket off and everything, and I get stuff out of my pocket, and I pull out a completely black banana.
Ew, gross.
He just starts laughing, and he goes, "You didn't eat that?" And I said, "I couldn't figure out how to peel it, eat it, and keep riding at the same time." And he just chuckled and goes, "Oh, that was easy." And he did it, man. I don't know how he did it.
Oh my gosh, I would have loved to have known how.
Yeah, I don't even know
Really?
where the peel went, but he did it. He said, "It wasn't a problem for me." And I'm just like, so
Come on,
anyway,
Doug. Come on.
that's one of the stories
Chop,
that
chop,
I
chop.
Oh my gosh.
that I
Okay.
told at this funeral. But
Thank
Oh,
you
okay.
for
So we
sharing
got
that.
three questions here left. So what are some of your hobbies? I think we know a little bit of them, but you want to talk about it quick?
Yeah, well, I play a little golf, and that's a really humbling game and frustrating game.
Isn't it though?
I like cars. My dad was always into cars. He was always into motorcycles. In fact, in the story in the book, when my dad first met his his sisters, my aunt's husband, he said, "I met your dad and he was 13 and he was riding a Harley." He goes, "I don't even know how your dad got a Harley at 13. But so my dad always liked fast cars, motorcycles, things like that. And so I kind of got that bug a little bit too. But
Awesome.
so,
Are you as fearless as he was?
there's a line. I'm telling you, there's always a line. Like, I was pretty good at racing and all that, but I always knew, don't cross the line. My dad, there was no line, right?
No line.
And he had
That's awesome.
he had so many concussions. I mean, I have some good stories about my dad just knocked himself silly a couple times, didn't know where he was. And
we're gonna have to have you back on this particular show series sometime.
Oh, there's life flight helicopter rides with my dad. There's
Oh.
ambulance rides.
Oh no.
He was on the edge. But he loved life. He did love life.
Okay. So let's get to the next question here. Tell us a little bit about your charity that you support called Honoring Heroes and Foundation. And I love this, Doug. So go ahead.
Yeah, the Honoring Heroes Foundation is, I'm on the board of that, and that's a group in Utah. And what we do is we support any fallen police officers that are wounded or killed in the line of duty. And it's really tied to the Utah Highway Patrol, although we have helped other agencies in Utah. But and it doesn't only just go to that as well. We offer college scholarships and things like that. Or one year, one of the troopers, his wife got cancer, and we helped with pay with some of her medical expenses and things like that. But I will tell you that, you know, the men and women of law enforcement and EMS and those types of people, they don't make a lot of money. And they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it for, you know, because they love what they're doing. But I remember one year a policeman was shot and killed, and his wife and family didn't even have enough money to to purchase his burial plot. And so we came in and purchased and took care of that and took care of the funeral expenses and things like that. But it's an amazing
Love that.
organization, you know, a 501(c)(3) and my dad was really heavily involved in that. And then we kind of grew up with that, and so I've taken that on as well. And it's just a great organization. And my dad was a man in the military, like we talked about before, and so he really respected our police. And if my dad was alive today, he'd be really sad at how some of the policemen and men and women are treated today. But yes, of course, there's a few bad eggs out there, but for the most part, I think they're really working hard to protect us. Yeah.
Yep, I was going to be a New York State trooper myself. I was a peace officer in New York, so I did investigation
That's
work,
cool.
and I even I do store detective stuff in big department stores and stuff. So yeah, it was something.
That's awesome.
I just didn't like going to court though, and that was always whatever. And paperwork I didn't like, but anyways. So
Yeah.
what are your future goals?
Well, they say that when one door closes, another one opens. And, that was really the interesting thing about this book is, I really did this book to honor my father and to kind of cement his legacy, just, and also as kind of a legacy piece, because I knew, as we sold the business moving forward, that there would be the fourth, the fifth, the sixth generations of Wings and on who maybe wouldn't even know who Hal Wing was, right? Maybe, they probably wouldn't know. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this book for that purpose, but for the main purpose. But then as I started getting into it, I thought, man, this book is just going to help so many other people too with life. And then I'll tell you, about a month and a half ago, I had a really interesting experience with Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, and we had a dinner and with them, and Ken Walls was with me.
Yes.
And so Ken's like, Ken's always like, he's always like, tell him this story. So I'm sitting there thinking, Mark Victor Hansen's wife don't want to know these stories about Hal and stuff, because Mark Victor Hansen told me, I know I don't think he'd met my dad. He goes, I know of Hal, I know I've heard of him and stuff, but I've never met him. So I'm telling him like two stories, and Mark says to me, I just texted you a endorsement for your book. Now, keep in mind, my book was with another publisher.
Oh, wow.
And he said, these are incredible stories. So we get done eating dinner, and we're walking out we're in the lobby, and he said, I want to offer you a 3-year publishing contract with my company. And I said, doing what? And he goes, we're going to write books together. And I said, about what? And he goes, I know what the first one's going to be. So the first book already has a name. And what he wants to do is do a whole series of fictional series together. But the book will be actual stories from my life and my dad's life under fictional characters. And we're going to do a whole series. And so the stories will be true, but it'll be a fictional book. And
all the guilty's names will be protected for the guilty as charged. Yeah.
Innocent. But anyway, so I was like blown away, and because I never considered myself to be an author, right? And I'm pretty good at telling stories. People seem to like them. But and I remember I was in 10th grade English, and I had this teacher, and she basically told me I was stupid. And I was like, wow. So I wasn't very good at English or math, but I was good at talking to people. And, and so all of a sudden now I'm going into these books. And so that's really what I'm going to be working on in the near future. The nice part about working with Mark Victor Hansen and his company is all I do is tell stories over Zoom. They interview me, they record me. And instead of me doing all the work, they're the ones that do the writing and editing, and we can pump out a book in 4 months. So whereas mine took me a year and a half. But it was a lot of growth happened in that, and because of that book, I now have these other opportunities. And Mark was, is telling me that we're going to do podcasts together and do some live events together, which are pretty exciting. So I'm going to be doing that. Obviously, working with Honoring Heroes, and I have another charity I work with called American Indian Services, which works with natives. And
Nice.
what we do is there's some pretty high-powered people that, like Johnny Miller, the former pro golfer, and Steve Young, who played for the 49ers, that are on the board of this charity and 501(c)(3), and we provide scholarships for college for Native Americans, and we get them off the reservation. They become nurses and lawyers and doctors. It's incredible how this turns their lives around and gets them off those reservations and gets them off of government dependency. So I work really closely with American Indian Services too. I really love that. So I'm working with that, and now I am trying to find a wife.
Yes, we know that.
So do we see an episode of The Bachelor coming up in your future?
I don't think so.
No, I
First
don't
of all,
think so either.
too ugly, but anyway, and too old, but anyway, but that kind of has been a real interesting part of my life, is that, I've been really successful in some areas, and yet in other areas I've struggled with relationship with, being married and stuff, which is, so we all have areas where we can improve and grow. I don't have any problem with friends and business associates. I've been really good at developing relationships, but I've struggled in that department. So I know that Doug Wing can improve and from all this.
I have something to say too.
Just stop trying, just do it.
Stop trying. Go with the flow, Doug. Just let it go, let it flow.
Yeah.
But what I want to say is, isn't it crazy that all those years ago, you still remember that school teacher basically putting you down?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was one person that said that, and that was her interpretation, and she could have had a bad day, or she didn't see the abilities that you had. And that's sad to me.
Yeah.
That then you still remember that, as most people typically do. We remember these negative things that people may have said to us. But then what I want to parallel that to is that with that school teacher, and maybe your one relationship that didn't work out, don't let that define you.
Well, there's more than one.
Okay. To know that.
Yeah, but I'll figure it out.
But you'll figure it out. But seriously, sometimes it's just the right people. And it's not really as much your fault as it is just the right people.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, one thing that I learned from one of the greats, like I said in the very beginning, was that my dad was so good at seeing people not in their current situation, but what they could become. And so he would hire a lot of people that nobody else would hire. And one of my favorite stories in the whole book and throughout my dad's life was, and I'll share this story with you if it's okay. Do we have time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is in the 80s, early 80s. My dad is, in the office, and the vice president of manufacturing comes and says, "Hal, will you look through these resumes with me? And we need to hire some more manufacturing people." My dad says, "Sure." So I'm going to grab something here just to show you something. So they have a stack of papers, and probably an inch thick, of people that had sent in their resumes. And the VP of manufacturing takes the very first sheet of paper off of the top stack and goes, "We don't need to interview this guy. He's a loser." And he throws it in the garbage can. My dad reaches down in the garbage can, pulls that piece of paper out, straightens it out, and says, "What do you mean this guy's a loser? It doesn't say anywhere on this paper that he's a loser. His name is, blank." And he starts looking at it, and my dad says, "This guy's an Eagle Scout, and he served a 2-year church mission. He's not a loser." And the guy says, "Well, he just got out of prison, so he's a loser." My dad says, "No, he's not. Bring him in for an interview." And he says, "You're crazy, Al." And he says, "Bring the guy in." So what my dad found out about this guy is that he was a great guy, a really great guy, and he made a really dumb mistake. He was a former police officer. He had taken something out of the evidence room that he shouldn't have taken, got caught, and he went to prison. He paid his dues. He came out of prison, and he ended up working for our company And he was a fantastic worker. What my dad found out, he worked longer than anyone. He came early, he left late. And after 3 years, this guy was like 6'2", 230 pounds of solid muscle. After 2 or 3 years, my dad pulls him into his office and hands him a big keychain with keys on it. And he goes, "What are those for, Mr. Wing?" And he goes, "Those are yours. You're the shop foreman."
Mm.
This guy looks down at the floor and goes, "Don't you know what I did?" My dad goes, "Yes, I know what you did, but you paid the price for that. You're a great man. You're a great employee. You deserve this promotion." And he said that guy came up to my dad and sobbed like a little baby. Just took him in his arms and sobbed. And so anyway, this guy ended up working for us until he retired. Wonderful employee, great man, great family. Now, what would have happened if my dad would have believed that guy when he said, "This guy's a loser. We don't even need to hire him. We don't even need to interview him." And so I really, learned from my father that, he had this gift. He could see people and go, "You know what? I see value in this guy. I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to give him an opportunity." In the back of the book, there's this poem that my dad wrote about opportunity. So there was several times, many, many times during my dad's career and my career that my dad would take people like that and lives would be changed and he would, see them as they could become. It was incredible.
I love that because I'm the same way. And I think it comes from, I had teachers, 5th and 6th grade teachers that treated me like that. And I was like, when people, but I've had also teachers that saw my potential when nobody else saw it.
Sure.
And so it takes, when you get somebody that actually sees you, and this happened many times in my life, but when you see people that give you a chance, the miracles and the things that happen to you are, people don't believe them. And it's like, you only need that one person to believe in you for your life to change. And who cares about everybody else thinks?
Exactly. Yeah. And just like Ryan Moss's story, how mentored Ryan Moss. I mean, my gosh, Ryan Moss doesn't have a day of college and now he's the CEO of Little Giant Ladders. Well, Hal Wing saw this potential in Ryan. He saw potential in me and he saw potential in the other, 400 plus people that more than that worked for him. Yeah. Yeah.
And that, my friend, is a giant success.
Yep.
For real.
Yeah, I mean, Hal Wing was only 5'7", but he was in reality a giant of a man. Yeah, and his shoes could not be filled for sure.
Aww.
I mean, that story and all the rest that's in the book, everybody needs to pick one up for sure.
Yes. And we'll put a link for where they can order their signed autograph one too in the comments later. Doug, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to talk to you about, Doug is going to be on my Live, Love, Laugh show, but I also thought of something else that Doug and I are going to do that is going to be a surprise to everybody. And I think Doug's going to like it too. So anyhow, so you'll have to stay tuned to find out how that works out. So
hey, I hope I added some value today. It has been wonderful being on the show. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
You kidding? I love it. I'm going to rewatch this later. You kidding?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is a collection.
Thank you for the opportunity. I sure appreciate it.
Well, I've known you through Ken's thing almost 2 years or a year and a half now. So, we did Clubhouse together too.
Exactly. I'll tell you what, Ken Walls and his wife, Jill, are wonderful people. And I will say this, there was times in the book where it was very hard. And I was like, you don't need to do this. You don't, I mean, I'm not doing this for the money. And, and Ken Walls, there were times where he grabbed my shirt almost and said, "Get this thing done," so I'm grateful for them. They helped me when, I kind of stalled out a few times, but, and when I'm telling you, when this thing comes in the mail and when you get a box full of these and you hold it in your hand, you see your dad on here and you see your name and your dad's, I'll tell you, there's a special feeling and you're like, this book can really change people's lives. And it's true. Yeah. It's just something about holding it in your hands. I'm so glad I did it. I'm just so grateful.
So we're grateful that
we're grateful that you did it too. And it's amazing.
Your friendship, we may not talk all the time, Doug, but through Ken, all of us, we're so connected. We are truly a family. We don't have to talk every day. We're all there to support each other. And that's what I love. And I'm blessed to say that I know you and love you and consider you a friend. And I can't wait. Someday I get to hug you in person. Great interview with Mr. Doug Wing. Everybody should go get a
Go get a
copy.
copy.
It will
Thank you. And
benefit you.
I will say that Scott Ricard is he's the very first person that ordered books from me, and he ordered 7, and I'll never forget it. And thank you.
And
Scott.
yeah,
Way
it
to go,
happened that
Scott.
Thursday. That happened that Thursday night while we were in Ken's room. So
Yeah, he ordered, he ordered, and he
Oh,
shared.
yay.
Thank
Sean
you
just
so
ordered
much.
a copy.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, I got the one on Kindle right away when you offered that too. So, and
Yeah.
it's even on Kindle too, correct?
It's on Kindle. I'm working on the Audible, and of course, I'm
Oh,
doing the voice, and Ken's got me set up, and I should be done with Audible next week, and so it'll be available real soon. And
that's great
I keep
news.
messing up, and I call Ken. Ken, help me fix this. So anyway,
Aw.
Good for Ken. He's a good friend.
All
He's
right,
a
you-
good dude.
We're gonna
man,
try to keep this under an hour here. So,
Thanks
thank
for
you, Lynn.
everybody coming.
Oh,
I
thank you,
appreciate
Doug.
you so
Don't
much.
go nowheres. We'll see you in a second. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Share this out and get his book. And Doug and I, next month, we are going to do something special. And so this isn't the last you've seen of Doug. So
Oh,
we'll
thank
see
you
you
so much.
later. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.